partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast, Boots on the Ground pretty sure this is number 8. I could be wrong on that one. But I've got Matt Raasch here with me from AgriVision. So how you doing, Matt?
Good. How you been, Casey?
Hey, not too bad, buddy. I've been kind of feeling my way through a few things, trying to figure out what's going on. And I figured I better call in an expert and see if he can point me in the right direction. Matt is with AgriVision out of basically where you're at now. You guys have expanded quite a bit. So where are you covering now?
Yeah, if you look at Iowa, if you look at basically I-80 and then east and west, and then I-35 north and south, we're that southwest quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also got a cluster of stores, half dozen stores up in northwest Iowa that go up to Minnesota border and then border Nebraska on the west, and then South Dakota up and clear in the northwest corner.
Right on. Okay. So we've had at least out in my neck of the woods, we've had a pretty winter this year. It's the first year in a while we've had winter.
Yep.
And we've got a lot of moisture that we needed quite a bit of, and we've gotten a lot of snowpack and those kind of things, and it's all melted off now here. We've been fairly warm here last February, first part of March, but we've gotten a fair amount of moisture. We're waiting to see what comes here this spring. I guess, Matt, looking at your area, what's the situation look like there? What's moisture situation look like? How's your winter been? All that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, good question. We kind of went into the fall last year, late summer was dry, and went into definitely with a deficit going into winter, but we've had kind of the same thing as far as snowfall. Actually got some good rains over the winter as well. It's shored some things up. So I think going into spring, pretty optimistic that we'll have some good soil moisture and planting into good moisture that way, and get us off to a good start coming up here in a month or so.
Yeah, it's not too far away.
No.
The old corn planters will be out running like crazy. So I guess so let's talk about this a little bit. So looking at where we're at on as far as input costs, I've been hearing, a lot of folks have been talking input costs have come way down from what they were this time last year.
Yep.
We've seen the price of corn and soybeans. We've seen some fluctuations kind of bounce around based around bunch of different geopolitical things that are going on in the world right now, but
Yeah, absolutely.
right now we still got a pretty good price on corn and soybeans and wheat and everything else that's out there. Cattle prices are good. Hog prices seem to be somewhat stable. They seem to get kicked around a little bit from time to time, but
Yeah.
they're still doing all right. What's the temperature right now of the customers that you're talking to in your area? I mean, you feel some positivity more than you saw maybe this time last year?
I'd say it's similar. Maybe it's backed off just a little bit, but I would still say it's pretty similar. As far as yields were down a little bit, but we also had where basis was very strong at the end of last fall, or the beginning of fall, I should say, that we had some ethanol plants in some of our areas bidding $8 corn.
Yeah.
So guys were taking it straight out of the field, 20% moisture, no drying costs, and getting a little over $8. So your cost per or revenue per acre was over $2,000 in some points. So, and then a lot of those guys obviously a lot of times deferred that grain. So as they made year-end purchases, some of that grain got deferred to 23. So we feel like there's still probably going to be some tax implications coming up just because of deferring grain again from 23 or from 22 into 23.
Yep. Now I think we're going to see a similar situation too. We don't have a whole lot of ethanol plants out in my neck of the woods, but with the ones that were there, they were doing a lot of stuff with similar things. You know, we had guys that were contracting $7.50, $8 corn when the board was $6. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty good jump for them. And, you know, obviously guys took advantage of that.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the let's start looking at some equipment here. So when you're looking at equipment in the marketplace, I mean, the first thing every equipment guy wants to talk about is combines because, oh my God, combines are combines, right? But and I'm no different when it comes to talking equipment. First thing I want to talk about is combines. So I guess looking at the used combine marketplace. So I did some research the other day, and I was kind of going around looking at a few things, and I just was curious to see what was on the marketplace. And we hear about all those, you know, the $500,000 this and the $450,000 that, and I'm like, how many of those can really be out there? Well, there's a little about like 1,200 combines out there that were $100,000. And now again, don't get me wrong, there's some really big combines out there, whether you're looking at the X9 or you're looking at some of the class 9 and class 10 Lexions and some of the big stuff that's out there that were $700,000, $800,000 machines. But you start looking at the class 8, you know, class 7 combines, and there's a lot of machines out there that are still $500,000 machines. I guess looking at that into your little crystal ball, Matt, I look into mine and I start kind of, I don't want to say that I'm scared by any means, because I'm not. That's not the right way to put it. But there is some concern out there when you start looking at a $500,000 used machine, and you start looking at the new one though, and the new ones are $600 plus. You know, it all kind of falls in line with historic. You know, you look at your percentages and those kind of things. All that stuff kind of falls into place. What's your thought on that? My thought is I got some caution out there. I'm not ready to say I'm scared yet, because that's not necessarily the truth, but I do feel some pressure in the market. I guess I didn't feel this time last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say we got the white flag in the washing machine, getting it all cleaned up to wave here in 90 days or so. But not quite yet. Just to your point, you know, I think everybody, you know, kind of is looking at that, especially late model, you know, 21, 22s, just like we were talking about there, you know, the $500,000 machine, those are starting to stack up. And as we were talking about earlier, we got some extra allocation that probably weren't planning on there last year from the supplier. And most of us took advantage of that of the demand that was out there. And so that has created more used. I think the other portion of it is that we had so many late deliveries. You see a lot of 22s out there that have 50 hours on them, you know, or something like that, where we normally would have a chance to sell those trades in the selling season and harvest that we didn't get to because we had to keep them as loaners. So it depends on, you know, how many you sell new in a year, but that you had to keep back. But I know we definitely had to keep some back just to satisfy customers that didn't get their new ones that wouldn't have probably been here at this time now. So yeah, definitely caution. But as you look down through the line, once you get past that, you know, 1-2-year-old combine, our mix is in great shape, and actually probably low, to be honest with you, on that behind the 21s and 22s. So if we can get work through those throughout the summer here, I think we'll all be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I think that's what you made a very key point there. I think that's important for everyone listening to this to remember that not all these $500,000 machines that we're talking about have 500 hours on them, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like you said, they're 50 hours, 100 hours. I mean, it's stuff that you would expect to see for that price, you know?
Yeah.
Hell, we have machines that don't even have like 25 hours on them.
Because
we got them in so late. But if you're looking at that spectrum, there's a reason why there's that many there, because I mean, there is a huge population of machines out there that have less than 100 hours on them. And that's
correct.
The other point you made there, which I think is worth mentioning, when I look at this kind of marketplace and how it washes out, you go back in time to like 2012 here, and we're gonna go back here and take a look at. I remember when I started working in this business, you know, in 2009, you know, 2006, in that time frame, there was just a bunch of 9770s that's all we had to sell, 9770s and like a 9610 on the other side of that. There's nothing in the middle. I don't want to say it's like that now, because that's not necessarily true. But when you're looking at where we're at, we're missing a big chunk in that, like that 500 hour range.
Yeah, absolutely.
That 750 hour range, you know, that 500 to 1,000 hour combine. We don't really have the market population for those now. I think the biggest reason for that is because we never really had the opportunity to get those machines, because from 2019 through now, I mean, depending on what you had when you ordered, what you're supposed to get, when you're supposed to get it, and all those kind of things, you might have had a 350 to 400 hour machine that's supposed to show up, but now it's showing up with 2 seasons more on it, and
Right. Absolutely.
250
Yeah,
or more hours on them. That's going to be a fun experiment to watch take and go, because I've talked about, some of these lost years between 21 and 23 about there's going to be a hole there just because,
Yeah.
there weren't that many produced, and the way people trade and things are starting to change and morph, that there may not be that lump of machines there that we need to see happen. I guess when you're looking at that, are you seeing that similar pattern develop where you're having more? Because it feels like everything that we're getting traded in right now has got 1,500 hours on it when you're talking about combines, or 1,000 hours or 1,200 hours or something like that.
Yep.
Do you see that machine come in that's got 750 or 500?
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing it in all different segments, to be honest with you. I mean, tractors are the same way, if we could, if we could get uh, just loads of tractors that are in that 200 to $300,000 price range. I mean, those just fly off the shelf, but trying to get those out of guys' hands, we either have a $450,000 200-hour tractor, or we got a $100,000 6,000-hour tractor, hardly anything in between. And trying to get those pried out of guys' hands, so to speak, has been very tough. So they're kind of in a position where, that tractor's good, and I don't want to trade it, or we can't give them enough to get it out of their hands, even if we are giving them a premium for it. So I see it in kind of several different segments of what you're talking about there, of the big gaps that we're seeing.
Those tractors, especially, that's a good point there. I mean, when you look at tractors, man, I tell you what they're trading, what they have, again, it's the holes in the washout cycle.
Yeah.
You've gone from $100,000, $200,000 something, and your next choice is $450,000.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so you're missing that step in between. That would be that actual stair step.
Yeah.
And the problem with that, when the guy does trade that in, what he's trading in, most people are trading that in too. So now you're kind of have a little bit of a snowball going on the back side of the washout cycle that typically we see on the front side of the washout cycle. So it's just it's a complicated dance, I guess, that we're trying to
It is. Yeah. And then, like you said, as far as the washout cycle, then trying to, you can get down to that bottom tier that moves out quickly, but how do you find that middle person to get to that one, to then know that the rest of the washout cycle is an easy mix?
Yep. And I think the fun game that we're going to be playing here over the next couple of years is that, especially when it comes to used equipment, the one thing a very smart guy told me one time is that the great thing about the used buyer is that they don't have to buy. The new guy that's on a roll cycle that's doing it every year, not that they have to buy, but it's very advantageous for them to keep doing what they're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And so the used guy can come in and stick his toe in the deep end of the pool and decide if the water's just right or too cold or whatever, and before they jump in and take that plunge. And I'm looking at the marketplace right now, kind of wondering, how long does, I used to look at combines and say about every 7 to 9 months, that's kind of was your hold time for a combine. Looking at a tractor about every 2 to 3 months now. In these unordinary times that we're in right now, tractors, I've had conversations with guys that were panicking about the tractors they had, but instead of selling them in 2 hours, it took them, 2 weeks. So they were out there for a minute. But when you're looking at the overarching kind of spectrum of how this whole thing works out, if you have a tractor every 2 or 3 months, you're selling a tractor, those kind of things, you're really working through that. I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like when our washout, our turn doesn't necessarily slow down to be like it's a stagnant turn. It's just the times between washout cycle iterations are just going to get longer.
Yeah.
That look like and what that thing feels like. Are you feeling something similar to that, or have you given that any thought?
Yeah, I know. I think you're spot on there as far as, we watch turn pretty closely, and, everybody's in the last couple of years has spiked pretty high, right?
Sure.
It was sold before it even got on the book. So then you hit day one and it's invoiced and gone. And we've definitely seen, not that it's changed much, but it's definitely slowing somewhat. And just like what you're talking about there, as far as then finding that guy to take something to. I guess we kind of noticed that just as how farms are going as well with, we still have a pretty wide range of age of farmers that are in that 60 to 70 range that aren't, all the land's paid for, so they're doing well.
Sure.
And they're not ready to retire, but they've got the 1,000 acres that they're going to farm. They're not changing any. And then there's a gap in there where there's nobody really in between. And then you go to 6,000-7,000 acre guy, and those guys are adding 500 to 1,000 acres a year.
Sure.
And those are going to be your new buyers for the most part of rolling equipment every year. So I think that's part of it too, is just the demographics of what we're dealing with in the age of a farmer and where they're at in their career and the acres that they're at of, like you said earlier about trying to get them out of their hands. Like, no, that 2012 that I've got, it's only 2,000 hours. That one will last me the rest of my career. I don't need to trade it. Like, well, we really need it. So we need you to trade it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. When you're looking at, so the demographics thing is the next thing I was going to jump in on. Are you seeing anything right now in your area that's saying, hey, we're seeing a little more retirement peak here, retirement sell peak stuff coming in? Or I can't say that I'm seeing any big peak, anything like that where I'm at, but it doesn't feel like it's let up any when you start looking nationally at the different sales that are popping up.
Yeah, correct. I think the only thing that maybe changed some guys' mind if they were on the edge of retiring was seeing what equipment was bringing last year on retirement auctions. They're like, man, I'm on the edge. Maybe I have some health issues and I could quit. And then when they start seeing what their equipment was bringing at another sale, then I think that probably made the decision for some of them. But
Sure.
As far as just guys deciding that, I'm going to call it quits for just because. Don't see too much of that. We've had even several conversations just in the last few weeks with some guys, and they brought it up themselves. They're, mid to upper 60s and don't really have any kids that are coming back to farm. And they said, yeah, we've had several people ask us if we're ready to retire. And they're like, no, I'm having the most fun I've ever had in my life. I have no debt on the farm, as far as my land's all paid for. I have one tractor that I owe a little money on, but I just keep that on the books because the interest rate's so low.
Sure. Yeah.
So like, yeah, we're making money and we're having fun. We've not had this much fun since we ever started farming. So that's keeping a lot of them, I think, in the game. I think it's more of maybe some health issues, and then, like I said, seeing what land prices and equipment prices have been bringing has maybe helped them make the decision to go ahead and get out. So, but not widespread, like you said.
Yep. So interest rates, you brought up a point there that I think is on everybody's mind, but I have not yet seen it make a divot yet into how people's buying decisions are coming around. I mean, we're talking anywhere. I mean, I've seen some 6.5 rates out there, and I've seen some 8.5 rates out there.
Yep.
When you're looking at those rates, no one seems to be, not that doesn't come up in the conversation. We've had a few guys step away and say, hey, look, I'm going to wait a little bit on this and see what happens. I don't feel like jumping off of my 2.5% rate I've got now into a, whatever.
Yep.
Are you feeling something similar? Do you see something similar like that out there where there's some caution, but they're still buying?
Yeah, I think, you definitely, they're aware that rates have went up. But there's two things going on there. I think that the guy that was the cash buyer from the revenue they've generated the last couple of years of farming,
Sure.
Interest rates before, if you had a low rate, that would trigger them. But now you almost have to offer, a waiver of some kind, just to get them to, if they are offering any financing. But for the rolls, those guys are definitely seeing it. As far as, looking at then payments and then price increases, that definitely changes the ball game from one year to the next. And so we're definitely seeing it that more than anything, of just the interest rate portion of that changing payments pretty dramatically along within price increase. So we've had to manage that through a lot of our annual rolls that we do.
Yeah. So I've been waiting for this other shoe to drop because like you just talked about this payment structure that you're looking at, how you structuring that to where, you're looking at, there's a million different ways to structure payments. So you go through all that, even though, especially in Nebraska, where you're in a level 2 property tax state.
Yeah.
Amazing that they have levels of that, but
Sure.
Nebraska's at the highest level you can possibly be at. And so you're looking at that, and you start looking at the conversation about leasing. Now, a few guys have talked about it and kind of kicked it around. I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like and how, if maybe leasing comes back into play. it'll be nothing like it was in
Right. Yeah.
15, but I'm curious to see if there's not a few guys out there that are looking at maybe some of these yearly structures where maybe a lease starts coming back into play in the conversation. Anyone in your organization started having those conversations with anybody yet, or are you starting to see some of that kind of come back into play?
Yeah, not yet really, but I think, like you said, I think it's not too far off in the
Yeah.
distant future as far as when you're, because a lot of people now that are, especially the ones that are growing, are looking more at what's my dollar per acre cost, and how do I keep that fixed, or how do I keep a handle on that so I know what revenue I'm going to generate. And obviously leasing, I know in the last time we went through kind of the leasing hotspot, but then we'd add, your power guard or
Sure.
comp warranty on it. So then they knew, hey, I don't have any breakdowns, or I'm not gonna have to pay any out of pocket over the next 3 years. Here's my payment. I put fuel in it and put insurance on it, and I know exactly what I'm getting. But as times went on, that's kind of went away, and interest rates obviously driven that a lot, and then residuals, being changed
Sure.
over time, change that ball
Shut the
game.
Wild West down a long time ago.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I think we'll start seeing some more of that as time goes on, just as you're looking from a payment standpoint.
Yeah.
Just especially with price increases that are in there, and then the interest rate as well. I think the payment will be more of an issue coming forward.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a key. Whoever can figure out that exactly what you talk about, the cost per hour, cost per acre, which I think the cost per hour conversation's always going to be there. But
Yeah.
I do believe that people are taking that cost per hour and then relating it back to the cost per acre, or even then down to the bushel, trying to
You
figure
bet.
out what it is that they're doing. And I think when you can figure that out, and how to market that,
Yeah.
I think you can really do a lot of very creative things when you start breaking it down that way. So
Yeah. Yeah. And we've kind of had to start doing that, with the X9 coming out of the price that
sure.
negates from what you were used to. If you went from a 780, all of a sudden now I want an X9 1100. There has to be some kind of ROI there, and I think then we break down the bushel of what I'm doing an hour and
Mhm.
the cost that way. It sometimes levels the playing field pretty closely to what maybe you were running before.
Yep. Yep. All right, let's talk about the auction market a little bit. Obviously, the auction market is not it's retail price pretty much when you start looking
Yeah.
around out there. I've watched some tractor sales, like the stuff that people are looking for. Some 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old stuff sell for way more than I would have guessed that it would have brought.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're looking at the auction market in your area, I mean, you have some quite a few bigger auction companies that aren't that
Yep.
far away from where you do some
Correct.
stuff.
Yep.
Looking at that auction piece of the industry, what are you seeing there, and how do you think that's influencing what your customers are doing?
Well, the one thing we've noticed, in the last year is that as people watch, the auction market pretty closely, they start seeing what maybe the tractor they have sitting in the shed bring on
Right.
an auction. So instead of trading it at what we want to trade it at, we've seen quite a few then say, well, I'm just going to throw it on an auction and see what happens. So that's hurt some of the trade cycle as well, just because of and not blaming them one bit, but it's just it's like then you have to have those conversations of saying, well, what it's bringing on a farm retirement sale is way more than probably what I'm going to be able to get on my lot, because there's a time right there that you have to bid by noon and it's over with.
Yep.
Where it could sit on my lot for 2 weeks, so there's an end date there, and
Mhm.
so that's changed a little bit. I'm guessing that'll kind of ease as we move forward, but that's one big thing we've noticed with auctions is that more people are willing to take that gamble and put a piece on there, and a lot of more times than not, they come out ahead than trading it. So
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases too, these guys, when they're looking at some of these things and they look at the 7% or 10%, that they're going to pay to get that stuff sold, that commission to the sales guy or to the auction company.
yeah,
It's up front, they might make more money, but I think after they do everything else and kind of wash everything out, we're really not that far off.
probably not. Yeah, I would agree.
Close. We're pretty close to what they're going to be at, and maybe plus or minus 1% or 2. It's not like we're not off 10 or 15%. And I think when you factor all those things in there, you kind of see that happen. But I think the one thing that I've I think the one thing that I've been curious to kind of see continue is what is the auction quality stuff that we see. I don't really see the auctions out there anymore like we saw, over the last year of the low hour, 9R or the low hour 8R, something like that going to these. I'm really not seeing that anymore as on the regular basis that I saw. I'm still seeing it, but not like the regular basis I saw before. You seen something similar to that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it used to be look on certain auction companies' websites and see what auctions were coming up, and it was just like, holy, where did all this stuff
Where'd you
come
get this
from?
from?
Yeah, where'd you guys get this from? So, but then looking through now to here recently, yeah, I would agree. You don't see there's a few in there that pop up that'll be fun and interesting to watch, but not nearly as many as there was in the previous 12 months, like you said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Technology, I think, is one of those things that we are going to obviously see more and more of as
Yeah.
we continue to go on, and we're starting to see a lot of that play into fact now here. When you're looking at the used equipment coming across the line, how many people do you have right now that were saying like, hey, I want this specific piece of technology that you can only get when it's new, and then how are upgrade kits playing into what you see happening in your area?
Yeah, I'd say, in the last 24 months, a lot of those people that were maybe on that smaller end as far as number of acres farmed that were kind of on the edge of saying, man, I really would like the exact emerge or IRHD technology. I just don't think I can justify it for the number of acres that I'm farming now, as the income they were able to generate in the years that we've had, and those just the time that those have had on the market now. Most of the people that we've seen, especially from a planner standpoint, if they're gonna upgrade, they're going, man, if I'm gonna upgrade, I'm gonna upgrade to that type of
Sure.
type of technology. And we've seen a lot of that. Even I can think of a buddy of mine that farms a couple thousand acres, and he went from a 1770 to a DV60 exact emerge.
Right.
That was about 7 or 8 years old, but he's like, I can see the return on investment on it. And if I'm going to invest money in something and change something up in my operation where I'm going to buy equipment, that I'm going to make that move. And that's what he did. So, and we're seeing quite a bit of that. And that when they do make the move, then it's technology related.
Yep. And I'd say one thing on the upgrade kit that I've noticed a lot on this, especially when it comes to planners, is that, you can take you go out and you price out a new machine, and let's just say it's $450,000, which that's a brand new 24-row planner in most cases. And then you go back and look at what that same machine costs in 2012. Well,
yeah,
it's about half price, right? So now when you start looking at the upgrade kit side of that, is you can get the brand new planner for a quote unquote 2012 price. Now I can already hear the arguments. People are, well, yeah, but I got the cost of what I got in the 2012 to start with too. It's still less. It's still less.
Yeah, it's still less. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to get the latest and greatest stuff. And I think, it kind of feels like to me that is the traction. That traction is really starting to gain. And
I think so too.
I had a conversation with a customer the other day, and I was like, hey, realistically, when it comes to buying planners, if you're looking at buying a new one or doing an upgrade kit, unless your bar's jacked up,
right,
the upgrade kits is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, you're getting a new planner, basically.
Getting a new planner, you're getting everything.
Yeah,
so you look at like what Deere has to offer, and you start looking at like what Precision has to offer on their side.
Yeah,
Precision Planning and those kind of things has to offer on their side. You're starting to see that spectrum now of what's a new planner even look like anymore? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That conversation you're having, and the same thing on sprayers. You're starting to see a similar kind of movement on there when you start looking at exact apply upgrade kits and See and Spray upgrade kits and all these different things that you have coming out down the line there too. That sooner or later, a power unit's a power unit. You're really more concerned about what you're hooking to the power unit, what the power unit be upgraded to. And I think that seems like it's gaining more traction every day.
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like part of that too is that we have a lot more confidence in the manufacturer on the upgrade kits. The first couple 3 years there were some hiccups and part of that was suppliers, and part of it was we didn't know what we were doing either, and trying to retrofit a bar in ours that said to take 40 hours and it took us 4 months, or whatever the case was. But
Yeah, we had a few of those too. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
but no fault to anybody. It's just, it was just a learning curve. But I feel like that learning curve's kind of flattened out now to where people are more confident in that upgrade portion of it, and shops are more confident in installing them. So I think there's just a lot of experience that's been had over the last few years to make those a more viable option than what they were right out of the get-go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how like the old tillage setup crews that go around and set up tillage, if that evolves into
right,
get installation crews or whatever, that'd be what that looks like in the future. So when you're looking at last thing here, so when you're looking at some of these some of the custom cutter machines, because we're getting ready to head in that time the year. We're about 2 months away from the wheat run starting down south and moving through there. What's that market look like for you, and how has that evolved over the last couple of years for you?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. I mean, when we acquired the stores in Northwest Iowa, we weren't a chopper dealer before that, but they were, and so we acquired that contract as well. And so it's been a little bit of a learning curve for us. We feel like we're starting to get our feet under us now, and we'd actually just recently hired a guy that's just focusing on chopper sales. He's come from the industry, knows a chopper, loves choppers, almost perfect guy, where the rest of us were just like, man, I don't know a lot about those things. It's just, I know they're hard to trade for. So probably the biggest thing, it's almost like the combines for us that we watch, is the large choppers, because it's hard to find the next buyer for them, because it's, you don't just decide I'm going to trade my 7450 in for a 9900 and be done with it, because then I need to add another silage packing tractor, 2 more trucks, 3 guys, and all that. So it's figuring all that on the backside, and then how do you make that viable for the next guy, and where do you find those next guys that would be looking for that type of machine on the used side. So I feel like we're starting to get work through that. We're probably more excited about that business than we have been in the past, honestly, just because of having somebody now in place that knows the business, knows the equipment, and is going to be focused on it 24/7. So
that's the one thing about choppers that combines aren't. I mean, you have to keep trucks on a chopper, right?
Right.
At least on a combine, you've got some time to fill up your 2 or 3 or 400 bushel bin before you need to stop. And I think the one thing about the chopper side of the thing is that the logistics that come along with that, and if you've not been around that, it's
eye-opening.
It's like me trying to tell some kid that's married couple about what it's like to have kids. You don't really know what it's like to have kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't know what you're getting into.
But you don't really know what that feels like to you to that. And I think if you haven't been around the chopper business and really seen it operate, it's a next level thing when you start looking at logistics. And I think that's a big eye opener for anybody that's been in that business.
When you get into it, you definitely consider if you made some of the right life choices or not. But it's such a short window too, depending on the weather here in the last year. I mean, when a drought sets in or anything like that, man, it's just such a short window that they have to get that harvested in the quality that they want. So it's all hands on deck when they're ready to roll. And I feel like we've gotten that probably in place now, but it's a little bit of a learning curve of knowing what that takes to support that type of industry.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. All right, Matt, this last thing here, when you're looking at the overall 23, what are you most concerned about, and what are you most optimistic about?
I'd say what I'm most concerned about, I think we probably talked about, is just the late model combines, and not necessarily maybe our own inventory, or like you talked about, you aren't, your own inventory as well. But it's when if people decide to start pulling certain levers, if it's deducting pricing or offering a 0% for 6 years or something like that, or then taking to auction, and then people start seeing what the auction values are on those. That's when it changes the game at the dealership level. So definitely cautious about that moving forward, of watching auctions and things like that coming up. I know there's already a couple that they're going to have some on there, so going to be curious to see what those bring. And then be watching that moving forward if we need to be moving aggressively before that, which is kind of our plan right now, to be honest with you. And then optimistic probably about the 2023 is going to shape up just with what we already have sold, what we know we have coming in later in the year that's sold. Feel like we're going to have a very strong 2023, and just hoping we're kind of due, honestly, for a good weather year. We've kind of had extremes, for seems like a few years. So hopefully Mr. Hackett's right on is that we're going to have some rain here in the spring, get off to a good start and carry through throughout the season. So just optimistic overall, I'd say, about the ag industry. I mean, with where we're at, and used levels, I think, are pretty healthy throughout most organizations. So I don't think you're going to see a flood of equipment, hit the auction market or people dumping equipment anytime soon, which always helps at the retail level. So just a fun time to be in ag, I would say.
Sure. No, I think you're right. And I think the one thing going for us on the equipment side of the business is that we are we're going into this with not a full cupboard. You know what I mean? We still have to get some stuff in there, and before we start turning that now, pay attention to the dollars and what that looks like and those kind of things. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at overall machine volume,
correct.
We don't have that. We're not selling into, 11 billion combines, used combines sitting in the marketplace, and a bunch of tractors and everything else. We've got a lot of holes in a lot of places that we need to get filled up. And we still got people looking for stuff, we gotta wait.
You look back, and I think even though supply chains were a heck of an issue and a major pain for everybody, it was probably a blessing in disguise with the way the ag economy was going at that time. Otherwise, we probably would have had a repeat of 12 and 13 when the economy was so high and equipment was readily available. We just ordered, and not being able to do that was probably a blessing, and will help us longer term than just a short-term blip there. So
it'll be interesting to see how allocation, if that becomes an everyday vernacular out there.
No doubt.
Watch, see what happens there. So
no doubt.
Well, Matt, I think it's a good place to stop, man. I appreciate you being on the podcast. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you're doing over at AgriVision. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, probably myself, 515-210-5673, and appreciate you having me on, Casey.
I appreciate you every time you've been on here. Matt's what have you been on there, 3 or 4 times now?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Keep going back to the well, baby.
Sounds good, man.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast and check out the video version of this over there on the YouTube channel, Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related, and check out the sign up for the Moving Iron Summit in Nashville, Tennessee, 11 through 13. Matt, you've been to those.
Yeah.
You recommend going to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I've missed a one, other than the one that we didn't have in COVID, right? So otherwise been to every one of them. It's definitely not only the information you get there from the presenters, but just the networking is second to none of the people you can meet, and just create new networking through the people there. So yeah, I absolutely encourage you to attend if you haven't.
Yeah. So check that out, man. I really, really appreciate that, Matt, and check that out. So if you want more information about that, go to movingironllc.com, click in the upper right-hand corner where it says Moving Iron Summit, and you get all the information there, or you can send me an email at movingironpodcast@movingironpodcast.com. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Matt Raasch. Let's go with some iron, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard work.